So you've just bought a brand new pair of snowboard bindings and you're wondering how to set them up properly on your snowboard. The first thing you want to think about is your stance width. Now, most snowboards will come with a reference stance already marked on the board, and that's a really good place to start when you're first wondering how wide to have your stance. From there, you want to think about whether you're going to be doing more freestyle riding or whether you're going to be going for a more free ride approach. Freestylers will tend to have slightly wider stances, and that's just going to help you with stability when you're landing and for spinning in the air. Unless, of course, you're someone like Jed Anderson, who's going to go with a slightly narrow stance just for that kind of style and for spinning quickly onto and off of rails. If you're a free rider, a slightly narrower stance that's more in tune with your shoulder width is going to be more beneficial because it's going to allow you to have a more dynamic range of motion in your lower body. So once you've figured out how wide you want your bindings to be, the next stage is to look at the binding angles. Now, a really common one for freestylers is called a duck stance, and that's typically minus 15 degrees on the back foot and plus 15 degrees on the front foot. And that stance is going to allow you to ride equally well switch as you do in the forward direction. Free riders, on the other hand, who spend most of their time riding forwards, are going to probably want a slightly higher degree of angle on the front foot. So once you've figured out your stance width and angles, it's time to think about actually mounting your bindings to the board. A really good way to do this is to put your boot into the binding because you want to make sure you don't have too much toe or heel overhang. Most bindings come with a standard 4x4 disc, which can be rotated 90 degrees to either allow you to move your bindings forwards and backwards over the edge or left and right. Now, if when in the horizontal orientation you find that your toes are overhanging too much, you'll have to turn the disc into the vertical orientation so that you can reduce that toe overhang. If they're fine in the horizontal direction and your toes and heels are more or less centered over the board, then leave them in that orientation so that you have more stance options. Once you've made sure that your boots are properly aligned over the board, it's time to screw on your bindings, and then you can start customizing the fit of the bindings. The next stage is to center your toe and heel straps over your boot. Now, most bindings will have a little lever that will allow you to shift the position of the heel straps over your boot. So you want to make sure you get them nice and central so that you get really good power transmission where you want it. The final stage in setting up your bindings is adjusting your high back and heel cup. Some bindings will allow you to actually rotate your high back in the heel cup, and if that's possible on your bindings, it's great to align those high backs with the heel side edge, and that's going to give you maximum efficiency at transferring energy directly to your edge. Forward lean is another adjustable feature commonly seen on snowboard bindings. Free riders and guys that like going really fast and carving around the hill will probably want to set a higher degree of forward lean because it will allow you to go from toe to heel edge rather quickly and give you lots of control over those edges. Freestylers, on the other hand, will be more likely to want a lower degree of forward lean because you don't really want to be catching a hillside edge sliding down a 20-foot handrail. I ride rails quite often, so I tend to have quite a minimal amount of forward lean on my personal binding setup. Right before you screw your bindings onto the board, just double check that you've indeed got your front foot at the nose of the board and your back foot at the tail of the board. And also, another really common mistake is to actually have your bindings the wrong way around. So just make sure that your buckles are on the outside of your feet. At the end of the day, your binding settings are a very personal choice. We'd recommend trying a bunch of different settings out. So experiment with your forward lean, try moving your stance around, and just figure out what works best for you. If it's comfortable and it works, you're going to have a better day on the mountain.